Good morning and welcome to the center. This morning it was a little bit late because of the internet problem, some kind of slow. So however, today our program we're going to start right now. First we're going to do the meditation. The Venerable Panyaloka is going to lead the meditation. A few minutes, maybe 5 minutes totally. Then after that, Reverend Kusala is going to give a Dhamma talk. After his talk, there are question and answer. The last item is little bit chanting, page 4 and page 10. Thank you again. Venerable Panyaloka is going to start.
We are going to practice now. Feel free to sit as you are comfortable. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. We are going to practice the loving kindness meditation with these reflections on loving thoughts. Reflect upon these words. May my mind be filled with the thoughts of loving friendliness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. May I be free from enmity. May I be free from ill will. May I be generous. May I be gentle. May I be relaxed. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be healthy. May my heart become soft. May my words be pleasing to others. May my actions be kind. May all that I see, hear, smell, taste, and touch help me to cultivate loving friendliness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. May all these experiences help me to cultivate the thoughts of generosity and gentleness. May they help me to relax. May they inspire friendly behavior. May these experiences be a source of peace and happiness. May they help me to be free from fear, tension, anxiety, worry, and restlessness. No matter where I go in the world, in any direction, may I greet people with happiness and peace. May I be protected in all directions from greed, anger, aversion, hatred, jealousy, and fear. May my beloved parents, brothers and sisters, teachers, may my enemies, may all beings in the universe, may they be free from enmity, ill will, and grudge. May they all be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick find health relief. Take a few more minutes to practice the silent meditation. Kindness meditation. Open your eyes when you hear the sound of the bell. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful.
Thank you, Venerable Panyaloka. By the way, next Sunday, coming Sunday, Venerable Panyaloka is going to give a Dhamma talk. So right now, I think time to start today's Dhamma talk. Today, our speaker, Reverend Kusala, I think he's ready. Kusala, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me change my view here.
All right.
Gallery view. Okay, can you hear me okay, Shanti?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, hi, everybody. I see all the faces out there, and thanks for joining us today. This is going to be sort of a repeat of the last talk, but with a different school. So my friend Bernadette, who teaches comparative religions at a Catholic high school in Torrance, invited me to speak this year, and I declined because of COVID. But I said, if you can send me some of the questions that the students have, then I'd be happy to answer those. So Bernadette gave them the assignment of watching a BBC documentary called The 7 Wonders of the Buddhist World. If you haven't seen it, it's about an hour and 14 minutes long, and it's not bad at all. And they travel around the world and they identify the 7 wonders of the Buddhist world according to the BBC. And I've actually been to 2 of the 7 wonders of the Buddhist world. So we'll get to that first, and then we'll go through some of the questions they have after watching the movie, the documentary. So if you want more context to what I'm about to say, you can find this on YouTube, the 7 Wonders of the Buddhist World BBC documentary. So one of the questions from the student was, have you been to all the 7 wonders of the Buddhist world? And if so, which did you find most connected to spiritually and why? Well, I've been to 2 of those. One of the 7 wonders of the Buddhist world is the Tooth Palace in Kandy, Sri Lanka. And I think it was 1994 when I had a chance to go there and look at the Buddhist tooth. Now, it's an amazing event to be part of because you haven't felt that much, or at least I hadn't felt that much devotion in a single place. And there were lines and lines and lines of people lined up to just get a glimpse of the Buddhist tooth. And as I recall, the Buddhist tooth was in a tiger tooth or a lion's tooth. So you really didn't see the Buddhist tooth, but you assumed it was inside that. And that would require faith and devotion as well. So that really stuck with me. Not the fact that it might have been the Buddhist tooth or might not have been the Buddhist tooth, but the devotion that people had towards that. And the actual palace it was in Kandy, Sri Lanka, was amazing. Now, the second wonder I have been to of the Buddhist world is Sheilai Temple in Hacienda Heights. I'm not sure why they call that a Buddhist wonder of the world. It's nice, it's big. It took a long time to get the permits to build. And most of the religious community in the area, as well as LA area, petitioned for those building permits. And it finally happened. And if you haven't been to Sheilai Temple, it's an amazing place to visit. It's giant. It's like going to China. They have really good food, and they have a wonderful shrine room. So those are the 2 that I've been to. And I don't know, you know, as a Western convert to Buddhism, I was less interested with the outside and more interested with the inside. So Buddhism for me has always been an internal trip. The external trip, visiting different temples and talking to monks and nuns, has been pleasant and useful. But of course, the main practice is meditation and the study of Dharma. Okay, another question. If Buddhists don't believe in gods, then what do they believe in? Now, this was a Catholic high school, so, you know, God is unquestioned. So Buddhists believe in, number one, that there may have been a human being who walked the earth 2,600 years ago, who found his liberation, who found his release from suffering, who ended his karma and never had to be reborn again. Now, there's archaeological evidence that that's the case, but he was never more than a man, a human being. So what do we believe in? Well, we believe that it is possible for human beings to achieve the highest level of consciousness, a rarefied consciousness, either called enlightenment or nirvana, and also ending suffering. Now, Buddhism talks about only 2 things: what is suffering and how to end the suffering. And so it's a positive message that your life can always be filled with less suffering rather than more suffering by following the Dharma. Now, the Buddhists also believe in the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha said, don't believe it just because I said it's true, believe it because you've tested it to be true for yourself. And this is a very important aspect of being a Buddhist, is we believe that there was a human being that achieved his full perfection, and there is a way that we can do that also, and the way is through the Dharma. So we believe that those two things are possible. And the fascinating part about the Buddhist journey is that ultimately that faith turns into confidence. And there's no question, once you're confident, that it does work and it is true. Now, do Buddhists believe in that there were gods? Are Buddhists atheists? No, Buddhists are not atheists. Buddhists are non-theistic, which is a whole different category. So the Buddha talked about the gods of India. He didn't say they were figments of the imagination, that they actually existed. But they all had problems. Even the gods of India suffered now and then, and would come to the Buddha to ask how to end their suffering. So we don't deny the fact that God, at least in the Western concept of God, exists. But what we do have questions about is, will this God, if I believe in him, her, or it, end my suffering? And that hasn't proven to be true yet. We still have suffering in the world, and each year and each decade and each century, we have even more suffering. So Buddhists don't necessarily think God can save them. They think the Dharma can save them. They think the Buddha was an ideal that we can follow, an example of how to practice and how to find release. Okay. How has living this faith, this life of faith, bettered your life? Which would be a perfect question for a Catholic monk. But for a Buddhist monk, living the Dharma, living your practice pays off tenfold. Number one, how do you live your practice? You take the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts: not to take life, not to take what is not given, not to indulge in sexual misconduct, not to speak unskillfully, not to consume intoxicants. Those 5 precepts are sort of a safety net that Buddhists use to not get caught in the desires and cravings and attachments of the world. That when we practice not killing, we're actually supporting life rather than taking life. When we practice not taking what is not given, we actually think about stealing as being unskillful and causing other people to suffer even more. So we have different ways of looking at things following the 5 precepts, and that does make your life better. Then we have meditation. Does meditation make your life better? Well, it does. It gives you a certain perspective that you wouldn't have if you didn't meditate. So this idea of meditating allows us to see the possibilities of our life. We are not limited simply by being or doing what we think we are or other people think we are. We have unlimited possibilities once we allow ourselves to meditate and come into contact with a greater sense of self, which ultimately turns into not self, no limitations. So yes, I found that practicing the Dharma in my everyday life has made my life better. Most people who do not know the major world religions, intricacies might often group, okay. What is the difference between Hinduism and Buddhism? And is there a difference? And between the Hindu philosophy and the Buddhist philosophy? Well, the word Hindu is an umbrella term, and the Buddha was born a Hindu in the same way Jesus was born a Jew. So the Buddha was a Hindu, and then he found the Noble Eightfold Path and rediscovered the Four Noble Truths. And at that point, he realized that Hinduism was limited in the sense that it was a hierarchy of gods. They did sacrificial devotion, killing animals to make the rain fall and the crops grow. And he found a lot of problems with the hierarchy of the Brahmins, that you're not a priest in Hinduism because of what you've done, but basically the family you were born in. So the Buddha realized there were differences that he couldn't accommodate any longer. And that's when Buddhism, or at least his path, became known to the world. It wasn't until much later that it was called Buddhism. But while he was alive, in the same way while Jesus was alive, Jesus died a Jew, the Buddha died a Hindu, but their legacy lives on. And those two started brand new religions. With the popularity of Buddhism coming into America, do you foresee an issue of the strict teaching and practices of Buddha getting too watered down in the American sense of living and culture? Well, you know, it starts by getting watered down. That's how we start to understand how it can be American, even though it seems to be an Asian philosophy. So 150 years ago, Buddhism came to the shores of America, and the Theosophists and others started to translate the texts into English, so Americans who are proud that they only know one language could read the ancient texts, and then certain groups started to practice Buddhism. So to invite people in, what we wanted to see was, how can it be useful in America? What do we need to know? Do we need to know another language? The Buddha said, no. If you're going to be a monk, Buddhism becomes established when you are born in that country, find Buddhism, and teach it in the language of the country. So we have the beginning of American Buddhism right now, where we have a lot of monks and nuns who were born here, who came to Buddhism, usually converted from another religion, and took the ordination, and now are teaching Buddhism in an American way, or I should say maybe a Western way. So that's the beginning. As one delves deeper into the philosophy and practice of Buddhism, one starts to see it's fairly complicated. And it looks like it's going to take a whole lifetime to even learn half of it. But the monks and nuns are there to assist as the lay people come and start to practice and try to understand what Buddhism is all about. Now, when I started back in 1978, 79, I couldn't figure out what the ancient texts were talking about. You know, to me, it was like the it was like the Bible in a way, that it was just like really hard to understand and break down. So what I did is I read books about people who went to monasteries and practiced. So I read their stories, and their stories gave me a reference point into understanding Buddhism at a little deeper level. Then as time went on, I started to read some of the commentaries of what the Buddha was talking about. And there were books and books of commentaries on all the sutras. And that allowed me to get an even deeper understanding of what the Buddha was talking about. And then finally, I started to collect the actual suttas of the Buddha. And we have the Majjhima Nikaya and the Digha Nikaya, and we have a variety of talks that the Buddha gave. And so I was able then to go directly to the source and get an even deeper understanding of what he was trying to talk about. Now, coincidentally, as I understood more and more about Buddhism, I also found my practice deepening. So I had my practice, and I had my understanding of Buddhism, and I had the texts, and those three started to evolve into a point where it all started to make sense at a very deep level, and I was able to find the thread that ran through all the Buddhist texts. So anybody out there who enjoys reading the Dharma, there is a thread that ties them all together. And once you get to that point, everything speaks the Dharma to you. So it doesn't bother me that we have the Buddha in some commercials or the Buddha in some ads on the internet. That's making the Buddha familiar to the American culture, and it shows that the Buddha is not a threat. Okay. Without a centralized deity, what is this central figure or concept of worship in Buddhist theology? Is it a subjective topic and independently different amongst followers, or is there an objective consensus? Well, the Buddha is the person. And what I find interesting is when the Buddha was alive and about to die, he said, I don't want you to do any images of me. I want you to portray me as having been here. So an empty cushion underneath a tree would symbolize that the Buddha had lived and died and passed on. But humans, being who and what they are, couldn't let it lie. And so they sent some artists out to try to define what the Buddha looked like and make statues and images. And he looked very Greek in the beginning. He even had a mustache in some of these replications of the Buddha. And if you go to a Vietnamese temple today, the Buddha looks sort of Vietnamese. And if you go to a Chinese temple, the Buddha looks sort of Chinese. And if you go to a Sri Lankan temple, the Buddha looks sort of Sri Lankan. So we can't let him go. Even though he's not a deity and a human being who achieved his full perfection, we want to represent him in some way. And what I've always felt is that the Buddha statue or the image is a reflection. It's like looking at a mirror and reflecting back to me my potential as a human being to end my suffering, to end my karma, and to end all future rebirths. So when I see the Buddha, at some level, I see myself. When I see the Buddha, at some level, I see the potential in every human being to find their peace in this world of birth and death. What would you say poses the greatest difficulty to reaching nirvana in the modern, complicated world? Well, it's always been difficult, except at the time of the Buddha. Apparently, you could listen to one talk that the Buddha gave, and because he had achieved nirvana already, you had a real good chance of achieving nirvana yourself. But now we're 2,600 years out from the Buddha being on earth, and it seems to be getting a little more complicated because we're so distracted by everything. Instead of going to the temple today, you're sitting at home looking at a screen of me talking to a camera. So it's like, okay, how does that put into the context of nirvana? What do I need to do to achieve nirvana? And is it any harder now than it has ever been? And it's always been hard, and maybe a little harder now, but we have so many opportunities to come in contact with the Dharma that we wouldn't have had 150 years ago. So in one way, it could be a little bit easier because we have access to the source. In another way, because of our busy lifestyles and no time to do anything, and now with COVID, we are oftentimes distracted completely the whole day, just getting stuff done or thinking about getting stuff done or doing stuff that really doesn't make much of a difference, never really thinking that one day I'm not going to be here any longer and I will have blown this chance to achieve nirvana in this very lifetime. So I don't know if it's any harder, but I know what we need to do is we need to stay focused. We need to do something every day that connects us with the Dharma, whether that be reading a sutra or sitting for 45 minutes in meditation or reflecting on the suffering in the world and wanting to achieve the end of suffering in the world. That we need to do something every day that connects us to the Dharma, and ultimately anything we do in that day will be a form of meditation. We will be simply doing a walking meditation, a sitting meditation, a lying meditation, a talking meditation, an eating meditation, a driving meditation. So our whole life has the potential to be practice. And with the outcome of nirvana and the end of suffering. This is a good one. Is the Buddhist swastika symbol still used today and seen as good luck and prosperity? Or has it slowly disappeared and lost its significance because of the Nazis having adopted it? Well, to be honest with you, I think in America and in Europe, I don't see many Buddhist statues being made with the swastika on the chest or any place on the image. And yet still in Asia, you can find wonderful Buddha statues with a swastika on the chest or some other place. And so I think Hitler did a great disservice, to say the least, taking that image of the swastika, turning it upside down, and giving it a whole different negative meaning rather than a positive meaning. So I rarely come in contact with the swastika in the West. It's just not out there. But maybe one day it'll change. Okay. When someone is older, can they convert to Buddhism without having to be blessed by the priests, just as the babies were in the Tooth Temple? Or will the Buddha not be with the person their whole life? Now, what that question has to do is with the movie, The Seven Wonders of the Buddhist World, and the Tooth Palace in Sri Lanka. And they had a clip of babies just recently born brought to the Tooth Temple to be blessed by the monks and the Buddha. And so they're asking, if you miss that opportunity, if you weren't born in Sri Lanka and your parents didn't take you to the Tooth Temple, does the Buddha still travel with you? Is it okay? Even if you're 50 or 60 and convert to Buddhism, will you get the same practice and teachings that the person who was blessed as a small child get? Well, a couple things here. Number one, the longer you wait to practice Buddhism, the less time you have. And so if you're converting on your deathbed, it's probably too late. It's probably better to go back to the religion that you grew up with. Example, when my mother died, she had been a Lutheran when she was married to my father. After they got divorced, she married another man who was an Episcopalian, and she became an Episcopalian. She didn't have her own religion. She came from a non-religious family. And on her deathbed, she went and asked for a Lutheran minister rather than an Episcopalian. So she was going back to the more familiar. And if you're a Buddhist and you've been practicing for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, it will serve you well. And you will have had time to practice and understand and dig into the meaning of the Dharma and what the Buddha did and still does at some level. So you'll be fine. But if you wait too long to convert, you may not have enough time to practice. So when I see older people practicing Buddhism, I just assume they've been doing it for a while. And that makes me smile, because the older you get, the more significant Buddhism becomes to you. You're not surprised by the little aches and pains that happen every day. If achieving nirvana means that we will be freed from the illusion of consciousness, then how will we know that we have reached nirvana? So that's really a good question. I think the illusion of consciousness came from the documentary. They visited a giant temple in Tibet. So, but if you're practicing Buddhism, how will you know that you've become enlightened? What are some of the significant aspects of enlightenment or nirvana that will trigger you into knowing that you're there? I don't know. I've often thought, some days I'm a little bit closer than other days, but I really don't have any way to subjectively look at myself and say I am enlightened. Now, I have heard people say in Dharma talks that they were enlightened. And I'd always have to smile, because I would say the same thing that this question said. How do you know? You know? And so one of the ways you can sort of get an idea how close someone is getting to enlightenment or nirvana is something called the four abodes: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So if you think someone might be getting close to enlightenment, or even if you think yourself that you are getting close to enlightenment, number one, loving kindness. Is your day filled with loving kindness? Is that the intention behind what you think, what you say, and what you do? And if that is always the intention behind speech, action, and thought, then you're getting close. Number two, compassion. I consider compassion to be the activity of kindness. Compassion to be the activity of kindness. So if your intention is loving kindness and your activity is based on that, then everything you do will reduce suffering in your life and the suffering of others. Number three, sympathetic joy. Do you find happiness when others are happy? Do you find success when others have been successful? Is it about you or is it about them? Is there a selflessness that goes into the way you look at the world now? Have you transcended ego enough to realize that we're all in this together and we're all interconnected and interdependent? So sympathetic joy for me is a real good test on how well I'm doing. If I resent the fact that someone won the lottery because I didn't, then I realize I've got a long ways to go. But if my brother is successful in something and I feel that success and happiness in my own life, then I'm getting closer. Equanimity, the balance, finding balance in everything you do without picking sides. Can you see the left and right and still accept the middle? Can you understand that equanimity and balanced mind allows you to see more realistically what life is about, and more importantly, what your life is about? That is a wonderful reference point, this equanimity. And now we've, in a place with the COVID and everything else, people are just going nuts because it seems that nobody is in the middle anymore. It's one side or the other. So as a Buddhist practitioner, as someone who meditates, as someone who studies the Dharma, can you find the middle even in 2020? So that's what I would say would be a good way to understand how close you're getting to the final goal of release from suffering, of your perfection as a human being. And I think I'm going to stop there because I see the clock on the wall tells me it's about 11:45, and I'm wondering if anybody has a question or a comment on what I've just said.
Yes, Nick, you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your talk, Bhante. Can you explain what you meant in a previous talk by no preference? And how do I develop no preference? And do I have to give up being a vegetarian to develop no preference?
Good question. I think there's a wonderful story that I posted years ago, I think on Facebook or on my website. And it was about a person who wanted to become a monk. So this was in Australia, if I'm not mistaken, and it was the Theravada tradition. And as you know, in the Theravada tradition, they eat meat. And in the Mahayana tradition, the monks don't eat meat. So now he became ordained and he was sitting down to a meal and there was meat on his plate. Now, as a vegetarian, which he was, should he deny eating meat because that's what he felt was the right thing to do? But as a monk who's been ordained, should he show no preference and eat the meat? And I always thought that was the best story, because what a dilemma for that person to be in. Should I go by my heart or should I go by my ordination? Now, if you've studied Buddhism, you realize that the Buddha was a beggar and the Buddha ate meat, and because it was what was offered. And so is a person a better Buddhist because they don't eat meat? Is a person a better Buddhist because they do eat meat? Having no preference means that you have balance. You, speaking of food, and you would look at your food and you say, this food is my medicine. This food allows me to live another day. This food allows me to ultimately achieve my goal of nirvana. It lets me be strong. It lets me feel well. We don't want to overeat. We don't want to undereat. We don't want to do too much exercise. We don't want to do too little exercise. And when it comes to being a vegetarian, if you're a monk, the Buddha said, if the animal is killed specifically for you as part of your meal, you cannot eat it. He also said, if you hear the cries of the animal, you cannot eat it. So there are some rules that allow us not to eat meat if we feel that's the path we want to take. I find as I get older, I'm less interested in meat and more interested in just feeling a little bit lighter and feeling a little bit better about what I consume. Though I still enjoy Oreo cookies, but nobody's perfect. So having no preference means you see everything has the same value. And that's exactly what we're not taught to look at. When we go to school or by our parents, we're taught to go towards the value. If it's going to be good, which of course is just an opinion. If it's going to be bad, we want to avoid it, another opinion. So can we look at this world with a balanced perspective and see that everything has the same potential? And our choice now is going to be based on our practice rather than what society or our culture tells us we should be going after. Is that helpful? Okay, anybody else?
Great talk as usual.
How are you, Shraddha?
I'm okay.
Good to see you. Good.
Trying to live a balanced life. Nearly impossible these days.
It's so
Fail
hard
every day.
And everybody has an opinion and all they want to do is share it. It is so hard to just be in the middle and balance and not pick sides.
I'm not Buddha yet.
Exactly. I say that every day. That's my new mantra. You know?
Kusala.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
Hey, Hideki. How are you?
Fine.
You said something that Buddha used the breath meditation to get to an enlightened state. Is that true? I can't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, I can't either, but let me tell you what I'd say now.
Okay.
That the breath meditation is found in both Vipassana meditation and Samatha meditation. So it's found in both. And Hideki keeps fading away. I love that backdrop. No, on the screen, he fades away and then he comes back.
Oh, okay.
So when I think of the breath meditation, I think this is probably one of the best objects of meditation you could decide on, because it's always with you. You could do either mindfulness or samatha, which is tranquility, as that is your object of meditation.
Okay.
And because there are 44 different kinds of meditation, and the Buddha did quite a few of them, it's hard to say exactly which meditation the Buddha used for his nirvana. But I think mindfulness of breath perhaps is close to what he probably did. The Satipatthana Sutta.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you.
So how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay, Jeannie? Okay, sort of like the rest of us. Okay,
Okay.
that's good. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so why don't I turn it over to the gang downstairs for a little chanting and meditation. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching what I had to say, because you missed football today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good Sunday. Thanks all.
Thank you, Kusala.
Thank you, Hideki.
Thank you.
Hey, there's John.
Hey.
How you doing, John?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Thank you for speaking today.
Yeah. Thanks for watching today.
Of course. No, it's great that you guys provide this over Zoom. I miss being able to come in.
It's nice. It really makes it convenient, and it keeps everybody safe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one more question.
Okay.
No more? All right, Kusala, no question.
Okay. No
Okay,
answers,
thank you so
Rebecca.
much.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will meditate few minutes, or we will chant few minutes, page 4 and page 10. Again, thank you for everybody, and next Sunday Reverend Panyaloka is going to give a Dhamma talk. I hope you all will join next week also. Right now we're going to chant page 4 and page 10.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Itipiso bhagavaṃ arahaṃ sammā sambuddho viññā carana sampanno sugato loka anuttaro purisa dhamma sārati sattha deva manussānaṃ buddho bhagavāti Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sanditthiko akaliko ehi passiko opanaiko pacchat veditabbo viññuhiti Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa Esa bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karani anuttarang punyaketang lokasati sabbitiyo vivajjantu sabbaro vinasatu mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi digayuko bhava. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick find health relief. Ning di du khang po kap o nya di nyai jang du sung sang ye nyai kong ai pa da Neng di du khong po kap o nya di nyai dang du sung sang ye nyai kong ai pa da Ning di du khong po kap o nya di nyai dang du sung sang ye nyai kong ai pa
Thank you again for everybody. Few announcements I earlier mentioned. Is next Sunday, Venerable Panyaloka is going to give a Dhamma talk. Again, thank you for Nam and all the monks here and Shan, everybody. And one announcement, little announcement. Chandasara's professor, university professor Mika Moto, her mother passed away 3 weeks ago. Moto Hideko. And we wish her good life, good rebirth. Also, all the merit we did here, we share with everybody, and we wish for everybody happiness and health. And by the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, you all be well, happy. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Vinita, we have tea and cookies, yes? Yes.